Perfect.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Illuminating Dialogue. Welcome back, everyone. Yesterday, we had Lavanya on, had a very nice, deep, insightful conversation. And today, we've got the pleasure of talking to Sunny. How you doing, Sunny?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
Awesome, man. I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Sunny is my good friend, amazing Bhangra dancer, also an investor, running his own business, and of course, an educator from Seminar of Life, educator in philosophy and psychology. So we have a lot of things in common. Before we delve into the perspective of time, the perspective about money, how it can limit us, how it can free us, um, and all of these juicy details about personality and stuff that I'm sure if you're watching, you're interested. Just to get a bit of context, people watching this are in their 20s to 30s, from the South Asian diaspora or from maybe India, Pakistan, etc. So if they don't know who you are, Sunny, if you could just give a wee personal introduction, a professional introduction as well.
Sure, no problem at all. So, my name's Sunny Gill, as Jyoti's kindly said. So I'm born in Glasgow. I'm 35, turned 35 last week.
Happy birthday.
So thank you. I feel like I'm getting wiser in my old age. So,
That's it.
there are some silver linings to getting older. And yeah, so I'm an investor. My background is I was at university for a while, a bit of chemistry, didn't graduate. Started a couple of companies. From that, it led me to the world of investing, and I've been doing that full time last few years. But there's always been an underpinning of philosophy,
Mm,
stoicism, especially as it relates to modern times, which kind of drives my decisions in life, both personal and business.
mm,
And over the last 6 months, I'm now embarking on a few new business ventures, which are spanning from sort of luxury tours, supercars, to an events company, and to creating an app and a couple of other small things. So uh, I
awesome,
like to
man.
keep busy, and I'm sure we'll delve into how I manage time and thinking and stress, etc. But yeah, that's me,
Yeah,
Sunny
man.
Girl.
For sure, that is a lot and a multi-dimensional man, if I may say so. No, that's impressive and very inspiring as well. So before we delve into all of that, you mentioned like philosophy, psychology, underpinning that. That's something I found in my own life, like going through uni, picking up on philosophy and just seeing that run through everything, right? Work, personal interests,
Mm.
health, right? Going to Stoicism, going to like Indian philosophy. Just kind of, if you could just talk about how you just stumbled across philosophy, or where did you start to find it, and why was that kind of important?
So, I mean, I think, so on a personal level, I think I've always been curious.
Yeah.
And whilst one could say that everyone is curious, of course, to certain degrees, I found myself always questioning things. Now, being a scientist, the basis of science is curiosity and questions. So
Absolutely.
perhaps, there's an influencing factor. But I think after my father passed when I was 21, which was quite sudden, that also as a life event sort of forces you to ask questions which you may not have asked before. And, stepping away from my own philosophy, I think maybe that's common amongst people. Something happens in life, you start questioning, you go through some hardship, and philosophy from the beginning of time has been the best way to answer these questions. So yeah, I guess the curiosity was always there. Father passing maybe catalyzed that, and that got me into actually funnily enough, that got me deep conversation. My cousin, who, like yourself, Jhoty, when we have these deep conversations,
Yeah.
he also shared an interest, and I would probably say that was one of the biggest forces which got me thinking that way. What is life? How to deal with things? Um, why do we think the way we do? Why am I not happy? Probably a
Mm,
question that we all ask. So
exactly,
yeah.
man. No, thanks for sharing that because as well, like for my grandfather was not proper Sikh, like Amritdhari before, but
Hmm.
he got baptized and seeing that transformation in him, he got deeper and deeper and deeper. And he got really deep, and just to see that transformation in him, he became quite a very deep guy, and actually he looked happier um, going through that depth. And he passed a couple of years ago, and I just feel I could connect to him now on a different level. That's just something that philosophy takes you down, and you're noticing it when you're looking back. You might notice it in other people. Um, so that's something from my life I kind of reflect on as well. But from your journey, like Sunny, like maybe from that age, for people if you're comfortable sharing, what was that kind of journey? How did that start? Because I think that might be quite inspiring for people listening to this to hear.
Sorry, let me make sure we're on the same page. Do you mean
Yeah.
from my father passing, that journey onwards, or?
Yeah, if you just don't mind sharing that journey, and then because I know that you went into your business at that time as well.
Mhm. So it was sudden. I guess uh, it was nighttime, so I'm talking to my father in the kitchen. I'm like, "Yo, Dad, I'm heading out." And then when I come back, there's an ambulance there. 2 hours later, he's gone.
Mm,
So it was really sudden. I was only 21, and it. See, the brain has a funny way, and a good way,
mm,
of making you sort of forget the details of hardship because it helps us heal. But so what I can remember is mostly the sort of the times in the hospital of that night. Um, but um, it was quite blurry, if I'm honest with you, because you're emotionally compromised, your head's all over the place, so the brain's not really remembering stuff. It's not really sort of, but what I do remember is what I vividly remember is saying to myself that night, as I cried, I was like, okay, time to grow up.
mm,
And it's a harsh reality, but I think it's accepting what is you're facing in front of you, and you've got two options: either you accept it, digest it, and sort of learn from it, or really don't. And a lot of people don't. A lot of people they go through these life changing situations and they quite never really sort of um, I wouldn't say survive. I guess they never really get back to their normal self.
level, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess where philosophy started playing, where you're asking like, why me? I think that was a fundamental question, and that led me to sort of looking at philosophy of the past. In actual fact, an uncle who family friend, see him as a
Mm,
bit of a father figure, and I would often ask him, why me? And I'm not overly religious. I'm not religious at all, to be
mm,
quite frank. But a lot of the ways of philosophy, they go hand in hand with religion. I guess it was a way of understanding the world, as was religion. So I used to ask him why me, and he would say, like, look, God will throw tests that those that can only handle it. You
mm-hmm.
can replace the word God with the universe.
Yes.
And, for me, that was a calls to accepting
Mm,
what was going on and sort of just really just embracing it and, moving forward. So,
Mm.
sorry, were you going to say something, Jhoty?
No, just thank you for sharing that, because that is a tough lesson to go through. Because I feel when, like you said, God or the universe, like when we're hit with these harsh realities. I don't know if you know Jordan Peterson, but
I do indeed.
he said something like, if there's a white van passing and you have this, let's say theoretically, you have a blindness to white vans turning left, and you're always
Mm-hmm.
going to cross the street. You're always going to be hit by a white van turning left until you learn the lesson of that. So, in a way, Jordan Peterson or other spiritual traditions say it's kind of like a karma thing, where you're going to have a bias or a blind spot in your head, and that thing is going to keep repeating until we learn that almost. So that's where that stoicism aspect comes in. That's where the other philosophies come in that we're not going to learn, we're not going to wake up until something's hit us hard enough and we realize where the pain is, and then we're going to be like, oh, okay, maybe I have to take
Yeah,
a different route here.
yeah. And I mean, I don't know if we're PG here or 18, Jhoty, so I'll keep the profanities, but
Sure.
I'll replace the first word. But like, stuff happens,
Yeah.
stuff happens. And I think the quicker you can realize that,
Yeah.
and I'm going to sound really harsh here, but people are going to die. Stuff in your life's not going to go the way it's going to go. Humans have a tendency to like we have a bias towards thinking things will remain the same,
Yeah.
right? And so when something goes out with a day-to-day pattern, it shocks us. In a similar analogy, it's why, like, let's say somebody's routine is wake up, walk to the train station, get the train to work, right? It takes the same route every day. But then one morning on that route, somebody walks out from behind a wall and frightens him because he wasn't expecting it. Because every day is the same. And it's the same with these life-altering events. Every day is the same. But then every now and again, something happens that it's a curveball. And you've got two ways to look at it. As harsh as this is going to sound, you might as well accept it, because what's the alternative?
Mm.
You know?
Yeah, we
And that's
just
what
gotta
I
keep
learned from
repeating
that.
that. Absolutely, man. So just going back to that then, how did that mindset almost shift you into the real world? How did that actually manifest itself, show up in the real world to in a business sense or in a doing sense? Because it's one thing us talking about this and me reading a lot of books on this and listening to a lot of podcasts, but then how did this actually play out in life?
Well, interesting. So I'm going to, in a way, what I'm about to say will contradict Stoicism in a sense, because
Okay.
Stoicism is all about maintaining your emotion, being that emotional rock, managing it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But we are emotional. We
Yes.
are emotional,
We're humans.
and we're humans, And I don't care who you are, how tough you are, like you're going to get emotional. That is just going to happen. So, I use so accepting that, I use the emotion of anger a lot. So after my father passed, I used the emotion of anger to drive a lot of business and purpose. And like, and one might argue, oh, well, you should control the anger. And I guess I do. I guess I channel it. Like, I'll still wake up and maybe on my own, not in front of anybody, I will, swear and this and that. But then I'll be like, I'll use that to drive that day's purpose. Okay, I got to get this done. I've got to get this business on the go. I've got to move forward. So I would say one of the ways it manifested was how I handled my emotional reaction to the world, and how I used that as fuel to further my purpose, whether that be business or things like that. And that shows up to this day.
Okay.
For example, whenever I'm hungover,
Yeah.
we all, you're emotionally all over the place a bit because you are hungover. And sometimes I get like a wee spurt of, I wouldn't say anger where I'm tearing my hair or flipping the table, but maybe I'm just like, some memory comes in my mind that I remember something from a few years ago, and I'm like, you know what? Sack this. So I'm just going to start working. I'm going to, and it happened yesterday. I was hungover, and then I worked for 4 or 5 hours. Every time I'm hungover, I work, and
Okay.
it's that lesson of where I managed to take, in this case, emotion of anger,
Mm,
and I use it to manifest progress.
that's so
Um,
interesting. So,
yeah.
I just want to like delve into this psychologically here because I'm like psychology nerd. Um, a lot of people, right? They're sitting in an office, say 9 to 5, or could be another 9 to 5, and maybe they're in their 20s and 30s. They're, like you said, repeating the same thing, going to the train station, going to the
Uh-huh,
office. Maybe their back's
uh-huh,
hurting a bit. Maybe their
uh-huh,
eyesight's getting a bit diminishing. Going to the
uh-huh.
toilet on their phone is their 5 minutes of bliss. Sorry to say that when you were drinking. But you get the point. But then, right, they might be feeling like, shit, my life is going out my hands. I'm starting to doubt myself. I'm starting to feel powerless. I'm starting to spend my time checking my phone, going through TikTok, right? That valuable life is slipping out my hands. And so
Mhm.
you're going to feel anger, but after the anger, feelings like resentment, trapped, and then ultimately
Yes.
feeling powerless. How can that young 20, 30 guy or girl, right, in that environment tap into their true potential? How can they start to take steps in that direction that you had because of a certain trigger point? But how could that person start to turn the ball in another way?
So, wow, great question. And actually, I'm thinking 5, 6 different ways to
Yeah,
look at
man.
this because, look, let me start off by saying this. Um, you know how we hear these motivational quotes, which might make more sense when you are feeling the way you've described, right? So
Yeah.
you're sitting in an office, you're on TikTok, and you see that thing like, it's a quote. It might be just like, if if you're always in your comfort zone, you will never progress, or something that makes you feel good for 5 minutes. Then you go back and you repeat the same things.
Yeah.
So I think ultimately one of the things which is really inhibiting people or is a hurdle and is comfort. It's modern day comfort. You have got the choice of comfort now. And this goes back to me saying I had a life-changing event. I was taken out my comfort zone. As an extreme example as that is, I'm still at my comfort zone. If you can go home every day, watch TikTok, get a dopamine hit, or you've got food in your belly. Okay, you might not have the car outside, you might not, but you've got the basic necessities of life. Ah, and, this is probably not what people want to hear. You most likely are going to stay in that comfort zone
Mm,
because you need something that's going to challenge your comfort of life.
mm,
So, um, I can be quite extremist in my views, not in a terrorist sense, but in a sense of like I can be quite black or white or quite
mm,
ruthless. So coming back to your example of the 20-year-old in the office, how does he get out of his comfort zone? If I was to say that being out your comfort zone is the only way to change, well, on an extreme end, quit your job. Now, if you can, like if you can quit your job and go out your comfort zone, and a lot of people will psychologically gawk at that. What do you mean quit your job? How? I won't have money. Come on, man. Like, you can most likely survive, most of you. You can get the food.
yeah.
Take yourself out of your comfort zone and get your passion. But let's not go extreme.
Yeah.
Let's not go extreme. Let's go in the middle ground.
Mm,
So if you're working a job and you're stuck in your comfortable zone, but your passion is elsewhere, and you always have this feeling of you can do more, or resentment starting to build, whatever the factors, I can't describe every situation. If
no.
you're generally in this bubble, then what I will say to you is that you need to take yourself out your comfort zone outside of work. Whatever way you want to cut this, you have to, in some shape or form, take yourself out your comfort zone. It will do two things. One, it will start rewiring your brain to love being uncomfortable, which is important. But two, you will start to divert some of that thinking and anger and attention towards a purpose, another purpose. So that could be as simple as, do you go to the gym? The gym's uncomfortable. You know, I go to the gym every day. I mean, it hurts. It's uncomfortable. But, you know, it takes me out of my comfort zone. So maybe that's it. Maybe, another example, you want to start a side hustle. Let's say copywriting. It's uncomfortable. You have to learn again. Why not take an hour a day in the evenings, 3 times a week? You've got 52 weeks in a year. That's 150 hours in a year that you take yourself out of your comfort zone. Come next year, not only would you have rewired your brain to be uncomfortable, you've increased your skills and your passion, which means you can start monetizing it, get more uncomfortable because now you're spending more time doing it. And you're making steps to not just sit in the office toilet on TikTok or be comfortable.
Exactly. And it's that genius zone as well, right? Like, I love how you say you're spending that time to rewire your brain. And maybe in that office environment, the reason why that person is not feeling empowered is maybe they're not in their genius zone. I believe through looking into psychology and philosophy, and natural innate talent for every human being. So I look at different things like the DISC personality profile, like Myers-Briggs. I know I sent you one thing. It's an ENFJ, so we have like a similar personality trait there. So I've been delving into that. And so every person, while we can't put people into a box, everyone has a spectrum that they can go into. It's worthwhile delving into your personality if you have an archetype, realizing where your genius zone is, leveraging that genius zone, and spending time in that zone. You know, for me, I'm interested in coaching, I'm interested in psychology, I'm interested in philosophy. So I will spend my free time doing that. If you're maybe like an INTJ archetype, maybe you're more interested in the very business fundamentals in terms of business trajectory. You're more interested in that pure, maybe crypto state of things, anything to do with analytical perspectives and extroverted thinking, if you're familiar with the Myers-Briggs system. So no matter what personality type you are, you can get into that genius zone and you can be that cutting edge version of yourself, right? To outclass. You're not directly competing with other people per se, but we're still living in a society. So can you put yourself where you're going to outclass people and then provide a service for people that, because you're innately good at that, you can provide. So I don't know if you could speak to that in terms of how you used yourself in that way, or you managed yourself in that way, coached.
Yep. Yeah, that is a good question. And I guess there's an element of, would be self-actualization there, isn't there?
Yeah,
There's
absolutely.
an element of realizing or sort of looking into yourself objectively and being like, okay, what do I suck at? What am I good at? You know, where are my strengths and where are my weaknesses? Now, the one comment that I would give, and I guess when it comes to psychology, and this is the field of psychology, isn't it? This Myers-Briggs and
Yeah,
everything
this is like
else.
psychology, exactly.
Yeah. So, you know, people don't hate me for saying this, but as you know, psychology is not considered one of the like foundational sciences, but it's still a science, you know, and but that's a good thing because it means it's not set in stone, you know, and you don't want it to be set in stone because look, if I do a personality test and it says X, Y, Z, and I feel like something slightly different, that may be. We're all unique. We can't perfectly fit into a category or a box. You know, you might 80% be a certain type, you know, but 10% something else 10 because we are unique.
100%.
And so what I would say is that certainly if you can do some of these tests, and what's that test called, Jhoty? The personality thing? The
This
EN.
this one in particular is MBTI, Myers-Briggs Personality Test. So I would
Okay,
type as a ENFJ.
okay. So jump on that, check that out, right? And see where you fall in. Get a starting idea of where you're at. And then you can do two things. One is you can jump on your strengths, play to them, because why not improve? But also realize where you aren't strengths and then go at your comfort zone there. Even if it's not meant to be suited for your personality, try going out. And the amazing thing about the brain, well, maybe it's amazing, maybe it's not, but we're pessimistically wired, which means that we don't really think about positive outcomes. We have to really, really. That's why motivational books work. You know, there wouldn't be motivational books if we weren't pessimistically wired. If we were all optimists, then you wouldn't have no need for motivational books. But so on that note, and tying it in with coming out your comfort zone,
Yeah.
do the test, find your strengths, get comfortable with your things that you aren't good at, and then use that to kind of allow life to open up pathways and opportunities that you didn't see, you know? So you go out your comfort zone, you end up meeting somebody, or you end up stumbling across a passion. A million things could happen. And suddenly your life's went a completely different direction.
Absolutely.
That, you know, it's a good way to go about it. Sorry, Jhoty.
Yeah, no, so just then going on back to that journey, I think it's a nice segue about how you can leverage your unique strengths onto that journey, both with psychology and philosophy. So I know we left off there just with you starting your business in your 20s. So I don't know if you'd like to go back to that and just show practically how then you started to do that in your 20s, how you started to kind of build a business. I don't know if you had business skills before then, because you were doing chemistry before.
Yes. So no business skills, and
Hey,
I want to I want to say something to everybody.
yes.
MBAs suck. So if you're doing business at university, I hate to tell you, it's probably a waste of time. You might not want to hear that, but it probably is. And in actual fact, a lot of big companies now have a similar perspective. And because look, the thing with business is dynamic. There's not a set of rules that suit every business idea. The best business practice is going and doing business. You know, so Elon Musk, who I'm a big fan of, hope I don't get any haters for saying that, but he hates MBAs. I mean, he doesn't hate them, but if he has a choice between two and somebody's got real life experience, another guy's simply got an MBA, he's choosing the person with real life experience, and for good reason. They've got experience, and experience is invaluable. So for me, I hadn't done any business. I'd been around the restaurant industry, typical Indians in the UK running restaurants. But that was about it. There was always an entrepreneurial spark, which we'll come back to because there's a digression there, and it's a way of thinking.
Okay.
Because for me, it was always like, okay, so there's capital in the world. People do a job, they receive capital. Capital allows you to buy your time and do things. And for me, it was like, well, why am I getting a fixed amount of capital? You know, why can't I accumulate more of this? Like, it doesn't make sense.
So this
So yeah,
is
that's
going
one
on
factor.
to the perspective of time and money, where you
Yes.
realized working in I guess at that stage you were working for somebody else and you're getting a paycheck and you were realizing I'm getting a paycheck, but then your perspective changed around capital and spending time. Just so that's a bit more clearer to people.
Yes. It's a bit, if we're tying it into the beginning when we said how philosophy underpins
Yeah.
our thinking. So I think I was 13, 14, 15. and the driving thought behind career future was money, rightfully or wrongfully so. And I would look at different wages and I'd be like, hold on a second, like, are you telling me that if I exchange this amount of time, that this is all I get? Like, what's going on here? And so that questioning, that curiosity, bringing it back, was always a factor in the way I thought. And that was the driving force behind the entrepreneurial spirit, I think. But in terms of the actual business and getting it off the ground, so yeah, I didn't have any experience. I had to learn the way. Jhoty, can you hold that thought? My dog is
Go
in the
for
room
it.
and he's
We're
whining.
live, so
I'm going.
it's completely good.
I'm going to let him out.
Oh, good. So yeah, if you've got any questions as well and you're watching this, feel free to drop them in the chat for Sunny and I.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay. I hope your dog's okay.
Yeah, he's
He
good.
was
He's
enjoying
good.
the seminar of life.
He's too spoiled, I'm too nice on him. He needs some philosophy lessons as well. So
Good,
coming back to business, no experience, I had to learn from scratch, and I was out my comfort zone. Okay, I had to, lose a family member to become out my comfort zone, but irrespective, I was still doing things which were not comfortable. And so the business was to do with sort of electronics manufacturing. So it did involve a whole load of different subject areas, raising money, learning manufacturing, supply chain, your marketing, importing, exporting from China. So then you had to learn a bit about corporate law. It's just a whole bunch of stuff.
Wow.
And man, it was so uncomfortable, but it being so uncomfortable raised the bar mentally of what you had to put in, And now I don't mean to sort of play down other businesses. All business is good. So if you're thinking about starting a business, I advocate for that. But it was more tricky than just, let's say, I don't want to make fun of someone's business, but let's say starting a bakery or something, which I know will be hard, but
it's a
it is simpler. Let's be
profession.
honest. Yeah, it is simpler. So yeah, it was extreme end. It was a deep end.
Yes.
And initially, what we had wanted to do, it was going well. I flew over to India, was meeting with sort of high-level management at Delhi Airport.
Okay, and what age were you at that time?
I say 23, I think.
Okay. Wow, that's pretty young.
23. I also left with sort of people affiliated or to do with Cafe Coffee Day, which is like the Starbucks of India.
Okay.
And so it was the deep end quick. That company didn't really go the way I wanted, being young. And that is actually, there's actually a life lesson, a pivotal moment in my life at that time.
Okay.
And that was accepting failure.
Okay.
Actually embracing failure to the point of actually wanting to fail. Now,
wanting to fail. So previously, what was your perspective of failure and how did that change? Because I feel like me and a lot of young people would do things in order to avoid failure, right? And you're talking about going into failure.
Bingo. Yeah, exactly.
So what was that mental change?
So I think you've summed it up quite well. Which is that up until that point, I'd always try and avoid failure, which of course you do. That avoiding failure simply means putting in the most effort and doing the best you can, right? Essentially, that's what avoiding failure is. However, you can always caveat, there's always nuance to failure. Failure is never going to be black or white because failure means you're one step closer to success, which means that you have to inevitably accept failure, yeah? So even though because you're never going to get things right the first time. If you did, then there would be no point in having experience. Experience would be a word. If humans got things right all the time, then that wouldn't be a thing. So failure, you almost are looking for the areas where stuff can go wrong, and kind of almost welcoming it. You're like, okay, well, if this happens, then I know that this can't work, and I can do this. You know, and it's a bit like risk as well. You know, if I can slightly digress, risk is what you know, right? Like it's like what was it when during World War II, I think it was, where the German tanks were on the Russian line or the border or something. That history geeks don't pull me up on exact details, and they'd fought of everything. What they didn't account for were the mice that chewed the electronics, and then the tanks didn't work, right? So risk is essentially what you don't know. And you don't know what you don't know until it happens, which is the same as failure. You know,
and there's something humbling in that as well, because you're accepting something that is kind of within your even thought process. So it's kind of a openness in a way. Sorry to cut you off there.
No, it's good. You're right. It is humbling, and if I can even take this example and translate it to one of my businesses now. So we've started a events company. We specialize in house music events. We're trying to take a lot of what you see at sort of big festivals and bring them to like smaller venues in cities around the world. Look, you know, the first one that we put on was a success. It sold out, but straight after it, my business partner was like, here's everything that went wrong. Here's the failures. We weren't counting the successes. You know, we embrace the failures, because it's only upon the failures that we can improve. Yes, the successes are good. I'm not trying to say totally flip your mindset, but try and put an equal weight on accepting failures. And because if you improve upon them, the successes will roll in. You know, don't worry. The things that you get right, you clearly put the right sprinkle of resources, effort, time, whatever in to get them right. Okay, so you can just roll with that, get that better. That's fine. Things you never got right, really think about them. Accept the failures. Look forward to them.
So going back to when you were 23 then, and then seeing this failure happen in your business, then what was that mindset that caused you to have your next journey, as it were? And how did that make you change in a different way? Because a lot of people would be like, okay, I failed, I'm going to go back to uni, and you know, that didn't work out. So how did that make you have, you know, a more upward trajectory in that sense? Because that's also inspiring.
So we can actually tie this back to when I was saying using your emotions to drive forward your purpose. And I talked about anger as one emotion. Same thing, exact same thing. Okay, you failed. The business didn't go in the direction that you hoped. Of course, I was pissed off. You know, I'm angry. I'm like, why? Why again?
Why me?
You know?
Yeah.
Why me? Why me? Why wasn't a success straight away? But I used that anger, and I was like, okay, well, do you know what? Like, I'm doubling down now. I am using that emotion. I'm going to have to accept failure more. I'm going to have to accept where things could go wrong, kind of embrace it almost. And it's funny because, see, when you embrace failure, in actual fact, your emotional response to it decreases.
Okay.
You know?
So it's almost like when you don't embrace it, you're giving it more resistance, and so it's having more power over your life. But when you're embracing it, the power decreases. That's very, it's sort of that humbling sense in a way that your ego is sort of like diminishing.
Yes. The power of it decreases, and simultaneously your control of it increases. So it's still there. It's still there, right? And when we say the power decreases, what we mean is that it doesn't dictate your actions. It still happens. You still get angry, but its impact on its power decreases. And then what increases is your use of it, how you control it. And that's why you want to embrace failure, you know?
Absolutely.
So you use that anger, use whatever it is, and you kind of like, okay, right, let me use this, let me control this, okay, let me embrace, okay, how else could this feel, right? I'm expecting that this could happen. You're even going through it in your head. Um, sometimes boxers do this, I believe, where they go for every scenario. In some scenarios, they're beat, and then they use
Right.
that mentally, and they say there's a saying which is boxing fights are won in the gym, not the ring. And it's because you're
Okay.
you're
It's
mentally
a
and
mental thing.
physically, yes, um, and they've probably accepted some form of failure in their mind before it's even happened, because there's a potential it could, but they're more realistic with it, and perhaps they're more realistic because there's nothing like getting punched in the face. Whereas business doesn't hit you physically, it hits you mentally, so maybe we don't think about these failures or how they could happen as much, but you
Yeah.
should, for the reasons
Okay.
that we've mentioned.
So it's funny how the sport and the business have it's the same. It's the same that's is underpinning it. And I think Lao Tzu said this in Art of War. It's like a winner is the same as a loser. They just try again.
Eh, Bingo.
Right.
I mean, essentially, is that not what we're saying here?
So, oh, nice. We've got a comment as well from Lavanya. What are some healthy ways you've found to deal with failure and embracing acceptance, especially at the I think it just cut off there. But essentially, some healthy ways to deal with failure. I guess for the wider population as well, who maybe are not in business and who are not into sports as well.
So some healthy ways, I guess. See, I'm trying to step out of my own self and think of ways that will apply to generally to most people. For me, because my personality type, I can be quite emotional, so that's why I
You
use
do.
the anger. Yeah, and for me, I use that. But um, so a couple of things. One is embracing failure is, or a healthy way to deal with it
Mm,
is actually thinking about it. When I say thinking, not just sitting and closing your eyes and thinking about it, but like really get a whiteboard out and a bit of paper.
mm.
And people say you can solve 50% of a problem by simply writing it. I don't know if you've heard that saying.
I've never heard it, but
So
I think that's true because I
yeah,
see the
so
whiteboard
because then
behind
you
you.
know the problem. Because then you know the problem.
Okay.
So if you've got an issue and just by writing down the issue,
Yeah.
well, 50% of it's solved because now you know clearly what the issue is or what the failure
Okay.
was.
So you've almost
Whilst
abstracted that and put it in your
exactly,
life, and now you're solving that in a real life dimension instead of mulling over the same thought loop. Is that where you're going
yeah,
with it? Okay.
essentially, like and if I can, a psychologist is going to do the same thing. If you go get therapy, right?
Yeah.
What's going to be the main thing? Just pretty much trying to distill down to what the problem is in as
Mm,
few, as simple way as possible. You're doing the same with a failure. So if you come across a failure, write it down, why you failed or the reason. Once you've got that, you can start to abstract your thoughts and really
mm,
understand it. And once you understand something like why does the brain get angry and all these things, why do you overthink? Essentially, it's because you don't understand what's going on. So you're trying to
mm.
figure it out, aren't you? That's what we do. We're problem solvers.
Ah,
So I would say that a thing that can apply to everyone, because I can't speak to individual bases, is write it down, and that you'll find could be quite therapeutic and a great way to deal with. Um, I think that covers Lavanya's question, doesn't it?
absolutely. Yeah, she did say later on. Thanks, Lavanya, by the way. And Tira's got a question I'll come on to as well. Hard to focus on positives, especially with those pessimistically inclined. I would say as well that everybody, like Sonny said, I am kind of an optimist in a way, but
Same.
obviously I do get pessimistic. I go for walks because when I go for walks, it completely detaches my reality from the human world. And
Hmm.
so when I'm in nature, my brain is like kind of in the problem solving mode, and just it gives me huge perspective. And so when I come back, I just reframe the whole situation. So another way, journaling, I need to get a whiteboard in here probably, and going into nature, I would say, is quite healthy. Tira asks a very interesting question, Sunny,
Mhm.
because we talked about looking at failure, but how important is it to embrace success? And can you linger on it for too long?
Great question.
It's like devil's advocate.
Can would you mind if I just add a quick comment to just your last thing you said,
Absolutely, yeah.
talking about the pessimistic, and then I'll come on to
Yeah.
Tirith's. So look, in terms of a way to deal with your pessimism, right? I actually do have a couple of great ways, and this applies for anything and everything. So you talked about walking, right? Walking is excellent, but there's a more higher level way of thinking of it. Physical. Anything physical will force the brain to think in different ways. So that's why people say I hit the gym and I feel better. I went for the walk and now I feel better.
Mm.
Anything physical, and that is because we have evolved to embrace some form of physicality. And now with our sedentary lifestyles, where you're in the office, you might not be doing enough physical activity. So, and it's again coming out your comfort zone, tying it back. So when you're feeling pessimistically inclined, um, go for a walk, do a sport, run, go to the gym,
Mm.
anything physical. It will force your brain to think in a different way. So that's number one. Pardon me. Number two is social. Social. And that is why it feels good to talk to people. Now, there's a few ways to do this. I mentioned I had a cousin who I speak to who happens to like Stoicism philosophy. So I go to him. If I
Mm.
phone him, any problem I have, solved. Maybe not solved, but I'm at least coping with it better, right?
Absolutely.
So if you're pessimistic inclined, try and find that friend or a family member or somebody that you can, who are willing to give you the time to talk. If not, we have the internet these days. Try and join a group. It could be anonymous, and where you feel like you can be heard and talk about things.
Mm.
So social physical number one, social number two. These are two ways I believe will help you steer away from having pessimistic inclinations, thoughts, etc., etc.
Absolutely solid. And just before we go into Tira's thing, I just want to add to that in that social and exercise. What you're doing when your mind is in a negative state, just to get technical, if you know transactional analysis, I've posted on my Instagram. If you know internal family systems, which is another form of therapy, what happens is your brain, your attention, right? Your attention is your fundamental building block as a human being. That's what you can control. Everything flows out of your attention. Whether you exercise, whether you're working, whether you're talking, I'm here right now. That's why a lot of people do meditation to hone in your attention. When your attention is too much in here, in transactional analysis, that's called the parent. When your attention is in the parent, it can get very critical thoughts. This can interact with that inner child, and it can block you from being in your heart center. That's transactional analysis. In internal family systems, what can happen is that different parts of you can be burdened. So if you look at that again, manager or protective part of you, that's going to get burdened. If you look at that
Mm-hmm.
internal family system parts,
Mm-hmm.
and there's also this exile, which is the same as the inner child, that can get burdened. And when these parts are burdened, we can't see ourselves properly, and all these parts within us are playing about. So when we're exercising, we're taking the attention straight into the body, and it's coming out of that. When we're socializing, maybe somebody who's got an unburdened part, because all humans essentially have the same parts. But when we're resonating with that person with the unburdened part, suddenly we can find ourselves unburdened. And so that allows the self or that attention to flow again back through our parts and see ourselves in a different light. And then that negative thought pattern can break. So that's just a deeper psychological explanation of that, just through different models. But I won't
That's
dwell on
good.
that too long.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that. And you're completely right. Look, if you're feeling pessimistic inclined, you jump to the gym, you're picking up that weight, or you're exercising. You have to think about that action, which means you're forcing that attention, that transaction. I like to do boxing, so if I go hit the bag, my mind can't wander. I have to focus on the bag, and when you can then control your focus or attention, you can think clearer.
Exactly.
So it makes complete sense. It makes complete sense. And if I can, just to finish that off,
Yeah.
when I was saying to you, when I'm sometimes hungover, I can work better. That is because I overthink my brain, and maybe everyone's like this, So you have all this energy in your brain, all this attention, and it's 10% there, 10% there, 30% there. Just thinking about what you're doing tomorrow, what you're going to wear tonight, what you're going to eat later on, when you're going to, and it's shooting off in multiple directions. When I'm hungover because I'm so tired and there isn't a lot of energy, in actual fact, it helps me focus more because I've only got 10% of the energy that I would usually have. And so my brain's not thinking about anything else but one thing at a time. But anyway,
Absolutely.
you're right. It makes sense. But let's go to Tirith's question.
Yeah.
What was it again?
How important is it to embrace success? And can you linger on it for too long? Because, yeah, it is important to embrace success. I think Tito was referring to when you were talking about focusing on the failure.
Mm.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go against the grain here, kind of say, because that's me. I'm such a contrarian. And for me, I'm a big believer of, well, if you want to be successful, then you have to do something different than everyone else because only a small percentage of people are successful, which means by default, you have to have behaviors and actions which are not the same as most people, you know?
Okay.
Um,
Interesting.
there'll be some gray areas there, so don't take that as black and white. But yes, ultimately, it's important to embrace success. I think a better way to think about it is, how do you embrace success? I think that's a better question because if you're embracing success by going out on a Friday night for drinks or meeting your friends, that's not, in my opinion, a great way to embrace success. To me, success should be celebrated with more work and more to-dos
Okay.
because you're then rewiring or teaching yourself to keep progressing. And it's not to say, look, if you do want to go and celebrate food or maybe just embrace the emotions with friends, that's me personally. And I can't expect everyone to be like that. But if you're asking me personally, I that's how I embrace my successes. I don't buy gifts. I don't go out and drink to celebrate a success. I'll most likely just be like, it's like this. This is a good way. So
Okay.
almost look at my life's and purpose like a video game. I said I'm doing this business, this, or I'm doing this, right? So in a video game, when you reach level 1, how do you celebrate? You keep playing the game, don't you, to get to level
Exactly.
2? You keep playing the game to get to level 3. Okay. So in my business, like we had that, say that first successful event. We've got another event coming up. Once it's over, guess what? We've got another event then coming up. We're not
Okay.
looking to celebrate the success of that. We're looking to celebrate by going on to the next level. And
Okay.
so, yeah.
So an interesting question to ask you is why do you want to be successful? Is it to play the game? Is it something fun? Or is there something deeper that drives you to be successful?
On a very high level, I strongly believe that I need to leave this world better than I entered it.
Solid.
And
Wow.
that might not be might say, well, what are events going to do for the world? Yeah, okay, I don't know. Maybe I give people fun and enjoyment. Maybe I let people have experiences that they've never experienced. Maybe in an altruistic sense that doesn't benefit the world in a way that advances all humans. Yeah, cool. However, I can't do every purpose, and I have got other purposes, some ways which might help the world in a better way. But if I'm successful at it and I have monetary gain, then I can always use that to give back to the world and make it a better place than I entered it. So it might not be the means to the end right in front of me, but there is a purpose driving why I just keep wanting more success. And that's ultimately to give back more than I've took, leave it a better place than I entered, ultimately.
And that is your underlying philosophy, and that seems to drive everything. That's quite inspiring to hear, because I don't know how you attained that way of seeing things, but I think a lot of people might find it very blurry or a bit dark to even reach that why. And so you have it very clear, and it's very evident that that runs through everything. So how did you get that? And if people don't have that big why, how could they get that? I know it's a bit philosophical.
Well, I think coming back to personality types, you know, I've always been, I remember, so my mum would always say to me, oh, you're too nice, Sonny, when I was a young boy. People will take advantage and do this. You're always trying to give away too much or give too much to people, which is fine. So maybe I'm more inclined to be like that. And I have to be sort of taken advantage of to kind of sharpen up where I put my time and effort. So that's one thing that probably plays a part. Number two, what really catalyzed it was that the only reason my father started his businesses was because he was actually quite dumbfounded about why Indians, there's over 1 billion of us, and we seem to what are we doing in the world? Black Americans seem to use sport to come out of poverty and bad situations to advance. 1 billion Indians, and we play cricket only. So one of his things was creating a sporting academy in Punjab, where we're from, and using sport to help people come out. Now, but I'm not saying I'll necessarily do that, but I guess that fed into the urge that was already there to help people, and so that just continued. And my mother, I guess, so you've got personality type, and then I guess so that maybe is, it's that whole, what is it, your what's that old thing, Jhoty? It's it's either your environment or it's from you,
or your nature and nurture. That's what you're looking
nature
for.
And nurture.
Yeah.
Nature and nurture, right?
Yeah.
So the sort of nurturing side comes from your personality type, right? The nature side was the influences around and things like that. And one of the things was seeing I suppose this is a bit of nature and nurture. My mother, she likes to also help people. From a young age, from one, we've been going to India all the time, and it's always buying the village kids stuff, or there's a homeless shelter there for kids. He's always getting them stuff, or even our job as a home carer, and she'll on our days off spend time with some of our clients or whatever, and she doesn't have to, so she does it for free, but just because she feels and so I guess that plays a part. And
it's so funny. I resonate with that too, because my mum's also a carer befriender, and also doing this for the clients that love. So I also wonder if that plays into the personality type as well.
Yeah, I think it does. And my mum would do it for free. She said she doesn't, so yeah, it's hard for me to put myself in somebody else's shoes and think, because look, every human being is battling the desire for himself and the desire to be altruistic, and you know what I mean, for the collective. Every human being, I don't care who you are, and that manifests itself in today being I want the shoes, I want that lifestyle, I want the car, I want it because it's for you, isn't it? Really, essentially, it's for you. Or if it's not, or it's for you in the sense that the way people perceive you, but it's still for you. Versus the collectiveness versus being like using your time resources to help others. So it's hard for me to say for other people because maybe my personality is so inclined that way.
I resonate with that
but
so much, though. Sorry, you were going to say?
I was going to say, but I guess I should look more into that of why some people are a certain way.
Yeah, I think it's I mean, if you're interested, guys, listen to this. There's Enneagram as well, which shows underlying motivations behind people. So, if you know Enneagram, I'm a 2-wing 3. That's a helper, then achievement orientated. But if you're a pure 3, that's going to be your underlying motivation is going to be success. And you have different things there, so that can be worth looking into. I don't know how you're doing for time, Sunny. We're reaching an hour. So if you've got 10, 15 more minutes, maybe we can just talk about South Asians. I don't know how you are
For you, Jhoty. For you, Jhoty. Of course, I've got time. Come on.
Oh man, so wholesome. Tira even says wholesome and enlightening conversation. So
I don't know how to do it back, but I think I can tell you do it. Is that it?
It's more like an orange. But that will do. Because a lot of South Asians people, right? They're watching this content, even people in India. And what can young men and women do, like technically? I know we talked about going to the gym, exercising, connecting, but what specific advice do you have to improve their quality of life, externally and internally on like a technical level, like practically?
Okay. I got you. So one of the key things that I now live my life by is the way you perceive time.
Okay.
Because unless I can get a bit technical, but and I think this can apply for Southeast Asians, but anybody in the world, no matter what your situation is, no matter what, and that is the way you perceive time and how you use time and how you look at getting a return on your time. So you have your most valuable commodity asset in life is time. It's worth more than money. It's worth more than anything in the world. This is why you have contracts for work that exchange 40 hours per week, 25 hours a week. They want your time. Your time is so valuable. You must understand this. And this is why I'm a big believer of, see, when you're going home and giving your time away to, let's say, Netflix, right? Or things like that, you're literally wasting your most valuable commodity. Something that somebody's willing to pay 10 to 100,000 to £500,000 per year, or 500,000, whatever money for your time, then you must realize that time is so valuable. So it's what you do with that time. And that's the way you've got to think of your time. We so easily, because the comforts of our life, disregard our own time. Our free time, like, I'll just sit on the couch. And man, if somebody's wanting to give you money for your time, then start thinking of it like sacks of money on your back that you're letting bleed if you're not using that time and getting a return on it in the future. So start thinking about your time, of how valuable is that. That's very important. And when you start thinking of your time like that, suddenly you'll be able to do more with your time, which will improve the quality of your life. Because then you'll realize that, wow, if I do more productive things with my time, this precious time, whether that's gym, whether that is any of these things, then you will actually buy back more of that time in the future. So you get more of that commodity back from your future self,
Okay. This is where the compounding comes in, right? Where you're making this 5, 10, 15, 20. Let's talking about months here in case anyone's lost.
Yes.
And then you're building that up, right? What will that look like? Just like you're using, if you're not familiar with stock markets or things like this, you have ETFs, right? So you're putting your money in an ETF or even any stock, and you're watching that business grow. You're not putting that money in to make it in the short term. You're watching that money grow in the long term. So this, when
Yeah.
I'm talking about technical aspects, I kind of want to touch on this because a lot of young people don't know this. And if they're losing out on ETFs on the stock market and they're not really knowing what's going on, they could lose a valuable opportunity in the next 10, 15, 20 years of their life. And I think
Yes.
your work is quite powerful in that sense.
Yeah.
So
So
please touch on that.
yeah, definitely. So let me just we'll focus on this. Coming back to the time, just to give another example how important it is. Some of the biggest companies in the world make billions just from your time. When you're sitting on TikTok and Instagram, it's free, isn't it? Did you pay anything for it? No. So how are they making money? Because your time, you're literally giving away. So time is interchangeable with money. Do not forget that. So when you're bleeding your time, you're bleeding money, like I said before. So on that note, and coming to good ways is there's a few ways to get a return on your time. There's a few ways to invest in your time and get more back. So one is that you can put your time or money, because they're interchangeable, into the markets. And one thing that I fundamentally believe is that financial education is one of the key things missing in school and in adult life. Financial education. The stock market has been this thing which has been so negatively painted, right? Essentially, what is it? Stock market is simply a place where you can invest in companies. How is that any different from investing in a bakery or your uncle's restaurant? It's not. And with some basic understandings, you can put your money or time into a machine, a company, which will multiply that money. And then when you cash that money out, you're actually cashing your time. Because as that money grows and you cash it out, you've bought back your future time. If you've got £100,000, 50,000, £10,000 lying there, that's a year worth of time, isn't it? Because you'd have to give a year of your life to obtain that money or time. So that's one way. And there's plenty of resources to learn. In actual fact, I have another Twitter and Instagram page where I publish my research on stocks for absolutely free. And I need to actually get my butt in gear and start putting out more content on that because
Absolutely.
I'm doing so many things. But we can maybe link it, or
Yeah, so
people can.
add all the links in the description, guys. So after you're watching this, all the links to Sunny's content, Seminar of Life, as well as maybe just say the name of that so people know where
So
to go.
my investing one is called Buying Your Time, and I think on Instagram it had to be 2 E's at the end, so time, Timee. But Jhoty will add a link.
Yes.
And when you click on that, it will take you to my research I publish in my Twitter, and I'll soon be making YouTube videos as well.
Awesome.
So that's one way to buy back your time. Number two, you can invest in yourself, your own time. And we touched upon this earlier on. So you need to stay at your job. That's absolutely fine. But you've got spare time. So instead of sitting on that couch or having Netflix, I don't think I've watched TV for years, right? The only reason I put TV on is as background noise to fall asleep to. Deadly serious. Don't watch anything like that. Not got time. It's too valuable. So what you essentially want to do is find a passion. It could be the gym. And that's two birds with one stone, because then you could end up becoming a personal trainer in your spare time, buying back your more time. Or if it's not, it could be copywriting, it could be narrating videos, it could be doing website design, it could be Lavanya, who you had earlier on. She's successful in singing. It could be she's now using her passion, where she might get gigs or she might be singing somewhere. She gets money for it. She's buying back her future time because she's putting effort into her passion. Exactly. And so find that skill, and do not tell me you can't put at least an hour in a week, even if you are super busy, even if you've got responsibilities of family, or you're saying to me, oh, Sonny, yeah, I'm working, but I also have a dog and I also have this. Okay, great. You can find an hour a week. I know you can. That's 52 hours in a year. So in 1 year, you could have 52 hours of expertise in your passion by doing 1 hour a week versus doing nothing. That 52 hours, right, after a year, next year you start monetizing that. So now you're getting money for that, which means that 52 hours is giving you a return on your time. So now you're compounding that time. So you see how if you look at your time as a valuable commodity and you actually use it to either invest or get a skill, you will then buy back your future time.
Absolutely.
And that are two technical ways I would say, you can sort of buy back your future time.
Thank you for laying that out so solidly. I think that's like so inspirational, like just as a young person to hear that. And then I would also say, if you're going to specialize in that second technicality point, if you're going to specialize, you're going to be specializing in a skill. Let's say you're leveraging your strength that we talked about, right? If you're leveraging your strength, what's going to happen? You're going to get expertise, you're going to get skill, you're going to get monetize that. You can build a system for that. So, if you're a personal coach, you're going to build a personal coaching system. If you're a copywriter, you're going to build a copywriting system. Then what happens? You can help other people enter that system for you. That's called outsourcing. Many people are looking for jobs. Many people are looking for side hustles. You can build systems where people can work into that system. And suddenly you have partners and you can work for people as well. People can work for you as well. So that's how you can build it out that way as well. That's not something I've done, but that's something I'm working towards as well. So I just want to also just flesh that out a bit more.
And if I may just quickly, so look, you might have the 9 to 5 and you're comfortable and happy. So don't sit here thinking that I'm advocating, for you to, if you're already happy doing your thing, absolutely fine. However, to me, and this is just my personal view, like you're lucky to be alive. I personally believe you've got a personal duty to make the most of your time. And so therefore, if you have got spare time, you're doing a dissatisfaction to all your ancestors who survived to get here now, right?
That's
by not using that spare time, and so you might as well use some of that spare time. And even if it's a passion you're not getting paid for, you're at least using it more constructively. And look, let's be more practical. Most people could do with extra money. So, if you want to be really realistic, we have to be a realist sometimes. And so, and that extra money might help you help loved ones. It might help you. Okay, maybe if you want those Gucci shoes, go buy them, but you're not going to get them sitting watching Netflix anyway, are you? So you might as well use that time and become more productive. Yeah.
And then for the more spiritual people among you, like if you're waking up as well and you're like, apart from your thoughts, you're looking at yourself and you're like, this body, I'm actually conscious in this body and I can breathe. And, you've got maybe legs to walk with and you've got a nose to smell with. You've maybe got a family here. You've got a roof over your head. You've got clothes to wear, as my mum says, and you've got food to eat. Having that level of gratefulness, having that level of humbleness, and in a more spiritual sense, you have this raw, unique passion within you. Let it out, man.
100%.
And Lavanya asks, I think this is a good question to start wrapping up. A bit more spiritual questions, Sunny. What are your thoughts on manifestation and the law of attraction?
Lavanya, you might hate me.
That's okay, we're open to all modes.
So, in its purest sense, the law of attraction, I think it's absolute rubbish. But hear me out. There is truth behind it. And I don't think it's absolute rubbish if you actually dig down into it. So what I mean is that I think it's been so negatively misconstrued, where it's almost like, if I think about it, then it will happen. And an extreme example I always give is like, look, there are billions of people who are thinking about food every day. They don't get it. billion people thinking about things, wishing that their wife or husband didn't cheat, or wishing this, or wishing that, whatever it may be, right? Wishes aren't going to get anything. Where manifestation and the law of attraction does work is it's that pessimism, optimistic thing that we spoke about earlier. And so if you're constantly pandering to your innate pessimism, we're like, oh, thinking about all the things that could go wrong, they most likely will go wrong, because those are the things that you're consuming your energy and focus with. So where the law of attraction, or how I would use it, is I think about the positive outcomes, things that could go right. And you can't predict the future, but having those at the forefront of your mind doesn't necessarily mean you'll achieve exactly that, but it'll certainly take you down a better path than what the negative outcomes could be. And so, you know, if I use an example, coming back to my events company or the app that I'm developing, in my mind, I have a certain expectation. You know, call it that, the law of attraction. I'm manifesting in my mind where I want it to go or how I want it to be, right?
You had a vision.
I have a vision. I'm not too fixating on that, because this is when you live life by certainties. I actually wrote on this on my Seminar of Life. This was one of the first things I wrote about. But it's like and I think Stoics of the past talked about this, where, see, if you live your life by certainties, you're doomed for failure. You know, you can't have expectations. So as an example, let's say my vision, I'm manifesting being a lawyer. But as part of that, I'm like, in my head, I'm manifesting, I get the lawyer. Oh, I get the wife I always want. I have the kids, the car, right? Become a lawyer. Life doesn't give you the other things. That's not the way life works, you know, and it's a sad truth. So it doesn't mean I get the wife, it doesn't mean I get the family, it doesn't mean I get the car, it doesn't mean I get all the other things, the fancy watch. I get that thing which I was not manifesting, but I had a vision, but then I worked towards. I didn't just sit and think about it and manifest, I worked towards. So the way I would think about it is, the law of attraction, it's absolutely fine to think like that, and it's absolutely fine to manifest. But practically, like actual, how you can actually make that happen is have a vision, make sure it's broad-based, stay optimistic, and don't have too many expectations from your outcomes. That is the way to use.
That's a strong framework. And I would say, going back to that anger you had as well, going more primal through the thoughts, because humans, we're animals, right? We just have that higher level of cerebral workings that we can produce thoughts. But if you go into that emotion, that anger, what you're doing is you're working with that anger. You're using chemistry. You're using your chemistry to work on that anger. You're transferring that energy into something productive. So even if you're not spiritual, or you're spiritual, you're using that energy, and you're using it, and you're vibrating, or you're, whatever you're doing, right? You're letting it out, and you're converting that into a positive, higher, the Greeks would say, a virtue. So they would say vice is anger. Even in, you know, in Sikhism, Hinduism, what other religions you want to say, you have these anger, you have other things that make you unconscious, but you are alchemizing, you are using chemistry, and you're turning it into a higher purpose. And so you're using that energy to drive your vision. And so your vision, again, you're not just sitting there, you're not just thinking it, but you're feeling it from the heart. And that is driving you. And so that bridges the gap, I feel.
Yeah. And look, the reason I was blunt about it, and why I wanted to give more tangible
practical
sort of, guide, practical, is because it's the same reason why, and again, people might not like what I'm about to say, but motivational self-help books don't work. You know, if they did, you'd read them once and you'd be fixed. But the reason why most people who keep consuming these books is because it makes them feel good. Just like the song that comes on, your favorite song, and whilst it's on for 5 minutes and the radio, you feel good, right? But after that, you go back to your, because the mind can be easily, you know, looking for that feel good, escaping reality, becoming comfortable, like we talked about before. And you should embrace the uncomfortability. And that means that, like, these motivational books, which, law of attraction, this and that, if honestly they worked, then these authors wouldn't have jobs and be making money. The reason they can keep pumping out books and things like that is because, it makes you feel good, but it's not practical. And if you want a good book on this, I would recommend a book by Derren Brown called,
Okay.
I think it's called Happy. But maybe we can put a link in
Yeah, I'll add
because
a link in the description for that then.
this book covers what I've just spoke about. And not only that, it actually breaks down why motivational books don't help. It covers a lot of the things we talked about. And the aim of this book was to cover Stoicism things and why ancient Stoicism philosophers, the rules and guidance they came up with is still the best we've got to date. It's still the best we've got to date. And so Derren Brown, Happy, I think it is, read that book. You'll get practical guidance and you'll start really thinking beyond just sort of making yourself feel good. And I think then you'll start embracing failure and being uncomfortable.
Absolutely. And just to bring it slowly to a close, just touching on Sikh philosophy as well, I've talked about many in the past, is you have that meaty beady and two flags. Beady always stands higher. That's representing that wisdom, pure wisdom in a sense. And meaty is that worldly energy, that worldly power to enact in the world. And so if you come across any spiritual texts, any wise texts through any religion, these texts are not there to give you intellectual understanding, but to show what is already within you and to take away any fear and to take away any self-doubt. And so these texts, people often go to these texts looking for knowledge, but actually when you look into it deeply and when you listen to rags, what you're really getting is you're connecting with the truth that's within you, and you are taking away any sort of self-doubt or any focus on negative in your life. So that's just to give a bit of a roundedness about how we talked about can also relate to the different traditions of the past.
It's
So
good. I love it.
I think we're reaching like a nice state. 1.5 hours, man. Time flies by. I wish we could go for a long time. Like Tira said, it's a very wholesome and enlightening conversation. But if you could just like, I don't know, do you want to say something a bit more on that
No, I was
topic?
going to say, yeah, we can, of course, we'll speak again. So
Yeah,
we can call
absolutely.
this episode 1. But yeah, sorry, I think I cut you off there. Were you about to ask a question or?
No, like Rosie just had a question come in. So similarly in Islam, hope has a partner, and its partner is fear. It is said, the heart in its journey towards God is like a bird, whose head is love, and hope and fear are its two wings. Wow,
I mean, that is a good. I mean, it kind of
wow,
encapsulates what we spoke about, isn't it?
yeah,
It's like it's embracing the fear. The hope is the optimism. The fear, I guess, is being uncomfortable, embracing being uncomfortable, embracing failure, and then the hope is the other side of that. And so, yeah, it's a good way
absolutely,
to
man.
sort of. I like that.
That's why like music and art and everything, it can just encapsulate whole conversations in just like a single song or frame. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that, Rosie. Um, so thank you, Sunny, for today. Is there anything you'd just like to talk about, where we can find you, where we can learn about the seminar life and your other teachings out there?
Yeah, so on Seminar of Life, believe it's got links to one is my newsletter, which is free, where I actually write about a lot of these topics. I've got one which has been sitting collecting dust about comfort, so I promise to get that finished in the next couple of days and get that out. And on that, I sometimes post some things, but mostly it's newsletters. So yes, Seminar of Life. There'll be a link below, and I'll get a link to my newsletter there. And then if you're interested in investing or where to start, or do you know what? See, even if you've got a question where you need pointed in the right direction of where you could even begin in the world of investing to buy back your own time, just drop me a message. I'm quite a sociable person, so I will get back to you, but I'll put the link in for the Instagram and also my Twitter there and my newsletter. It's all free. So yeah, sign up there if you want to learn more about how to think about life, buy back your time, then yeah, that's good content, if I do say so
Absolutely.
myself.
It's amazing content. Thank you so much, Sunny. And remember to like and subscribe and share this conversation if you think it's useful for you and your families as well. So thank you again, Sunny, and we'll see each other dancing in APV Pangra. Shout out to APV.
Yes, shout out to APV. Love, love.
Okay. Bye, everyone. Take care. Have a good evening.
Right. See you.
Bye bye.